evening and welcome to Friday's 6-1.
The headlines this evening. Ian Bailey is convicted at a trial in Paris of the murder of French film producer Sophie Toscan de Plantier.
It's an outrage, and it is just a grotesque abandonment of our criminal justice system.
An appeal for witnesses after 3 women in their 70s are killed in a road crash in Limerick.
Dispute over civilian deaths as US-led coalition says that it killed 1,300 in Syria and Iraq.
And Liverpool and Spurs fans arrive in Madrid ahead of tomorrow night's Champions League final.
Ian Bailey has been convicted in his absence by a French court of the murder of the film producer Sophie Toscan de Plantier in West Cork in 1996. The 62-year-old former journalist has been sentenced to 25 years in prison following the non-jury French trial. Mr Bailey has repeatedly denied any involvement in the killing. The French authorities say that they will now request his extradition for a third time. Well, for more on this, our reporter Sharon Gaffney joins us now from Paris. Sharon, take us through what happened this afternoon, what you know of it.
Well, the three judges took about 5 hours to reach a verdict. When they returned to the courtroom after their deliberations, presiding Judge Frédéric Aline took us through some of the details of the case. She summarised the evidence against Ian Bailey, and he was convicted in his absence and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Now, Ian Bailey has always denied any involvement in the killing, and as we know, his solicitors have also dismissed the proceedings here in France as a show trial, and they say they're invalid and unjust. But to the family of Sophie Toscan de Plantier, they say this is the end of a long road for them. They're happy to some degree that justice has been found today, in their view. We got the reaction from Sophie Toscan de Plantier's son, Pierre-Louis Bodivigno.
It's a victory for the justice, it's a victory for the truth, and now Ireland will have to extradite Ian Bailey, and we will put all the pressure everywhere to get the justice done.
Sophie Toscan de Plantier's son there, as you say. But what actually happens now?
Well, because Ian Bailey wasn't actually present in court, he can't appeal the verdict. So French authorities will now seek his extradition for a third time. They've twice done so, back in 2010 when Ian Bailey was wanted for questioning in connection with the murder of Sophie Toscan de Plantier. His extradition was requested again a second time in July 2016 after he was indicted here in France. So, as I say, French authorities will try to seek his extradition once more. If Ian Bailey is sent back to France, what happens then is he will be tried again here in his presence. And the idea behind that is that anybody who's convicted in absentia has a right to be present in court here in France for a second trial. So we'll, as I say, French authorities will seek his extradition for a third time. OK, well, Sharon, thank you very much indeed for that.
Well, in the past few minutes, Ian Bailey's solicitor, Frank Buttimer, has been reacting to the decision.
The verdict is no surprise. I predicted that this injustice would happen. It has happened. It's an outrage, and it is just a grotesque abandonment of our criminal justice system to a country which doesn't have a criminal justice system for which I have any respect. A lot of questions will now have to be asked about how we have allowed this to happen in circumstances that are just appalling.
Well, today's French court decision comes over 22 years after the killing of Sophie Toscan de Plantier in West Cork. Conor Hunt has been looking back at the events surrounding the investigation into her death.
Sophie Toscan de Plantier flew into Cork Airport on Saturday, December the 20th, 1996. She planned just a short stay at her holiday home. 2 days later, her body was found, murdered. She died from multiple head injuries. In the investigation that followed, freelance journalist Ian Bailey emerged as a Garda suspect. He denied any involvement and has done so consistently ever since.
I am saying to you that I didn't kill her, I had no knowledge of the killing, and I'm an innocent man.
He was arrested twice by Gardaí, but the DPP ruled there was insufficient evidence to press charges. Ian Bailey continued to make periodic appearances in the spotlight. In 2001, he was given a 3-month suspended jail sentence for assaulting his partner, Jules Thomas, always stressing his innocence in relation to the murder of the French filmmaker. He took a libel action against 8 newspapers in 2003.
Mr. Bailey, how do you feel about your reputation now? Please.
With no progress on the murder case here, the family frustrated. In France, an investigation into the murder was continuing. A team of detectives from Paris visited the scene. A French judge issued a European arrest warrant for Ian Bailey. The process of extradition was underway. In 2012, though, the Supreme Court blocked the move. Serious questions were raised about the Garda investigation. It was severely criticised. In 2014, Ian Bailey launched an action against the state for wrongful arrest. The claims, though, were struck out because they hadn't been made within the required time limit. He went on to lose his conspiracy case taken against the Gardaí.
He is obviously very disappointed with the outcome.
There was another attempt to extradite Ian Bailey, but the courts here again refused. The French then decided to try him in his absence. Today they delivered their verdict. But as far as Irish authorities are concerned, the murder of the French woman remains unsolved. Conor Hunt, RTE News.
A County Limerick community is mourning the loss of 3 local women who died in a 2-car collision last night. They've been named locally as Mary Noonan, a sister of former Minister Michael Noonan, Mary Costello and Maeve Bradley, who were all aged in their 70s. A 4th woman is being treated for injuries.
The bodies of the 3 deceased women were taken from the scene of the tragic collision in the rural village of Loughill late last night. Mary Noonan, the driver of one of the cars, was a retired nurse and sister of the former Fine Gael party leader Michael Noonan. Her friend Mary Costello was in the front passenger seat. Both were killed instantly. The woman in the back seat was airlifted to hospital in Limerick with non-life-threatening injuries. All 3 were on their way to Listowel Writers' Week in Kerry. The sole occupant of the other car was named as Maeve Bradley from Pallaskenry in Limerick. She died instantly. This morning, mass goers were reacting to news of the tragedy.
It's very sad. All around it's like last night, like the people ringing each other and everything, you know, to make you cry and to listen to, you know.
It's just a cloud over everybody in all the parishes around, you know.
We're absolutely shaken. And I knew the ladies. And I'm just stunned. We're stunned.
We're all very upset and we really can't talk about it at all. It was, you know, desperately upsetting.
I prayed over them one by one because there was one lady dead in one car and there were 2 in the front part of the car, the other one. But they were trying to rescue a 3rd person. They had taken off the roof of the car by the looks of things. So I was there standing, praying as best I could.
The collision occurred on a section of the N69 on the Listowel side of Loughill. The road was reopened today and Gardaí are appealing for witnesses and anyone with dashcam footage to come forward. These latest fatalities bring to 67 the number of people killed on Irish roads this year. That's up by 9 on this time last year. The Road Safety Authority has renewed its appeal, urging drivers to take extreme caution on the roads over this coming bank holiday weekend. Teresa Mannion, RTE News, Loughill, County Limerick.
Let's talk now to local Fine Gael councillor John Sheehan, who lives in the area. John, thanks for speaking to us today. Some heartbreaking descriptions there in Teresa's report about the scene last night and how the community are feeling. What have you been hearing from people in the area today as this news filtered through?
Good evening, Ray. Well, as this news filtered through since 8 o'clock yesterday evening, there has been a very sombre and tragic mood along the estuary, and the shock of what happened and the loss of life in the yesterday evening in Loughill has really struck a chord with the people. And they're really, they're kind of stuck for words. You see there from your clips from the people going to Mass today in Glen that they're really stuck for words in relation to what happened.
Yes, and of course you knew one of the women in the crash. So many people knew everyone involved, and Mary Noonan would have been known to you personally. Is that right?
Well, I knew Mary through my connection in Fine Gael, and the Fine Gael family sends their deepest sympathy to Michael Noonan and his extended family, as they do to all those who lost their lives yesterday evening. And I would like to personally send my sympathies to all who lost their lives yesterday evening. Mary was a lovely woman. She was a nurse by profession, and Michael lost his wife some number of years ago, and I suppose to use a military term, Mary had become his de facto aide-de-camp in the last few years, accompanying him to different functions in different places. They were just ladies on their way to Listowel. They were just doing an ordinary thing in an ordinary evening, and then the whole thing turned upside down, and there was such a tragic loss. And no doubt, I would presume thoughts and prayers, I suppose, being offered all through the weekend for the people lost in this awful accident. Well, there will indeed, and we were just heading into a June bank holiday weekend where the community of Lahill were going to do a big fundraiser for their town park, our Vaughan Parish Park, but that's on hold now, and it's just that, it just gives you an insight as to what can happen in a few split seconds, and a whole family's lives are turned upside down. The likes of Mary Costello, recently bereaved widow, buried her husband around Easter, and a very hard-working person from the farming community. We wish Mary Griffin well as well, who is recovering in the regional hospital, University Regional Hospital in Limerick, and we send our sympathies to the Bradley family in Pallaskenry. Yeah, a very, very sad incident indeed. Councillor John Sheehan, thanks indeed for speaking to us this evening. Thank you.
Gardaí have issued an appeal for information following a suspected hit and run at Whitehall in North Dublin, in which a young man was killed. The man in his 20s was hit by a heavy goods vehicle at the Collins Avenue junction at around 12:20 a.m. The driver failed to remain at the scene. The HGV is described as being white and with having no trailer.
The vehicle involved is described as a white articulated tractor unit which turned left off the Swords Road onto Collins Avenue and continued on towards Clontarf. Our appeal is for anybody that was in the area that may have dashcam footage, if they would contact us please at Santry Garda Station, which is 01 666 4000, or the confidential line 1800 666 111. At this time we're about to release images of the vehicle involved on our social media site, so our appeal would be to the owner of the truck or the driver involved, if they would make contact us please.
Yeah, still to come this evening, Brexit bites. North Donegal's tourist industry is counting the cost of uncertainty.
And coming up in Friday's 6-1 Sports News, a day of destiny awaits for Katie Taylor. We'll be live in New York ahead of tomorrow's world title fight. And Munster Madness, another dramatic weekend in store as Limerick and Waterford go in search of a first championship win of the season.
Now, the US-led coalition against the Islamic State has admitted that it unintentionally killed more than 1,300 civilians in Iraq and in Syria since 2014. However, one watchdog claims it could be 10 times higher. These figures come as fighting between rebels and Syrian government forces intensifies again, which could spark the worst humanitarian crisis in the world this century.
Rescue teams work to free this boy from rubble after a suspected airstrike in Idlib as the suffering continues for Syrian children. Crews eventually pull him from the collapsed building. He may wake up only to find that his 3 brothers were killed. Violence has intensified here in an attempt to shake the rebels' grip on the last remaining opposition-held province of Idlib. Day after day, unverified footage from the Syrian rescue workers, the White Helmets, shows what it says are civilians in the aftermath of airstrikes. Over the last month, fire by the Syrian government, backed by Russia, has killed almost 300 civilians, including 67 children, according to a Syrian human rights group. Jihadist rockets have killed a further 22 civilians, half of them children. This week, the UN denounced world powers for doing nothing to halt the bloodshed and destruction.
There are 3 million civilians in Idlib province. Too many has been killed, and obviously what is happening is not proportional in relationship to civilian casualties and the fight against terrorism.
As the shelling continues, new figures today from the US-led coalition against the so-called Islamic State group said it unintentionally killed more than 1,300 civilians in Iraq and Syria after it carried out more than 34,000 strikes over the last 5 years. But another monitoring group in the UK puts the toll much higher at nearly 13,000 civilian fatalities. With the ceasefire barely holding, the future for those in northwest Syria is unclear, while it edges closer to becoming the place of the worst humanitarian tragedy of the 21st century. Jackie Fox, RT News.
Police in Hungary have arrested the captain of a cruise ship that was involved in a collision with a smaller sightseeing boat on the River Danube in Budapest on Wednesday night. At least 7 people have died and 7 others were rescued and were taken to hospital. Hopes are fading of finding any of the 21 still missing alive.
The Sports Minister has called on the FAI to review the appointment of former FAI employee and current UEFA staffer Noel Mooney to the post of Interim General Manager. Speaking at an Irish football forum in Dublin, Shane Ross said the appointment is not consistent with the drive for reform and independence necessary for the restoration of government funding.
It was a gathering of almost 200 people from the various strands of Irish football looking to restore the battered credibility of the game following recent FAI controversies. Called a crisis meeting by the Minister Shane Ross, it was seen as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for change.
There's a change of culture which is absolutely necessary. There's a hunger for that change. And the other thing that's coming over pretty strong is that there is a lack of trust in the FAI.
However, while the Minister welcomed the declaration that the entire board of the FAI would step down at the next AGM, he believes the appointment of UEFA's Noel Mooney, an ex-FAI employee, as interim general manager is not consistent with reform.
You spoke to the president of UEFA, Alexander Sheffrin, this week.
Yeah.
What was his view on the subject?
He told us that this was an appointment that was made by the FAI. It wasn't made by him. I think he feels that we should address our concerns about Noel Mooney to the FAI, which we have done.
Among the submissions to the forum was a proposal from former Sunderland chairman and Ireland international Niall Quinn to overhaul the league here.
This is to just give the art of the possible to football, and we think the clubs and the professional game here, the League of Ireland, is right at the top of that list.
Players need to be at the heart of a reformed association, but the timeframe for governance change ahead of the July AGM could be ambitious.
There's a big crisis situation at the moment. I don't think that can be solved in the short term. There's a lot of firefighting, there's 6 or 7 investigations. What I think we need is maybe a 2-year strategy to regenerate the association.
In a venue synonymous with change, it's clear that an appetite for transformation exists among this forum at any rate. The pace of that change, though, and a realistic time frame for its implementation remains the key question. Tony O'Donoghue, RTE News at the Mansion House, Dublin.
Gardaí have discovered an industrial-sized cannabis grow-house in a 19th century Victorian mansion in County Clare. Over 500 cannabis plants were found at Tinarana House on the shores of Lough Derg. The drugs are worth around €900,000. A woman was arrested after a Garda dog discovered her hiding in an attic.
Tourism providers on the Inishowen Peninsula in County Donegal say that continuing uncertainty over Brexit has left them struggling. Visitor numbers from its biggest market in Northern Ireland and Britain are down. There were high hopes that last year's Irish Open at Ballyliffin could give tourist numbers a boost.
It was seen by millions of viewers worldwide. The Irish Open really put Ballyliffin on the map.
We've seen a massive impact in terms of the exposure we got last year. Visitors from all over the world, from Australia, the usual, from United States, Canada and Europe indeed.
I had a friend come and play and he said, "You've got to go to Ballyliffin." And so far it's been beautiful.
There's a great welcome for the golfers here, but there's also a concern in Ballyliffin at the drop in visitors from just down the road, Northern Ireland.
With the uncertainty around Brexit, maybe people are just not spending what they were, maybe deciding to hold off on a holiday or two.
Brexit is even worrying brides from the north planning a Donegal wedding.
I actually had quite a few phone calls, obviously maybe 1 or 2 a week, which are stating, is my wedding still going ahead, obviously with the Brexit fears. And we've also noticed a slight downturn on numbers as well. They used to be larger.
The popular Doe Famine Village sees changes too, including bus tours overnighting in Derry rather than Donegal.
Sterling has affected Inishowen along with Brexit. In some ways maybe caused a fear. Here in Inishowen, more likely, we're different than the other part of Ireland. We're surrounded by the border. We're more vulnerable.
That vulnerability, they say, should mean a greater political focus on Inishowen, improving infrastructure and reducing again the VAT on hospitality.
Maybe what works for down the country doesn't necessarily work here, so it's a one rule for all.
I think what needs to be done immediately is a focus on the A5 and getting that road immediately started from Derry into Dublin, because we've got a fine product here in terms of beaches, in terms of restaurants, hotels, and we just need more people to see that. Come up here and you'll come back, we guarantee that.
Eileen Magner, RTE News, Ballyliffin.
A 24-hour strike by around 500 ambulance staff began this morning. The paramedics and emergency medical technicians are on strike, are members of the PNA union and are in a dispute with the HSE over union recognition. The HSE says a robust contingency plan is in place. This includes managers who are trained paramedics working on the front line and the deployment of crewed Defence Force ambulances.
Now, still to come on today's 6-1, we will have more on that conviction of Ian Bailey for murder by a French court. We're going to be getting further reaction from his solicitor, Frank Buttimer from Cork.
And still fab at 40. RTE 2FM reels in the years and looks to the future as it celebrates a major milestone. Welcome back. The main news again tonight. 3 women who died following a 2-car collision in County Limerick last evening have been named locally. Mary Noonan, a sister of former Minister Michael Noonan. Mary Costello and Maeve Bradley were all aged in their 70s. A 4th woman is being treated for injuries. The US-led coalition against the Islamic State has admitted that it unintentionally killed more than 1,300 civilians in Iraq and Syria since 2014. However, one watchdog claims the true toll could be 10 times higher, with estimates that 13,000 were killed. And Ian Bailey has been convicted in his absence by a French court of the murder of film producer Sophie Toscan de Plantier in West Cork in 1996. The 62-year-old former journalist has been sentenced to 25 years in prison following the non-jury trial.
Well, we're going to stay with that story now, and we are joined from Cork by Ian Bailey's solicitor, Frank Buttimer. Frank Buttimer, thanks very much indeed for joining us this evening. I know, you've only heard of this verdict as recently as we have within the last hour or so. What do you make of it?
When something like this happens, even though one predicts that it was going to happen, it actually is a shock to think that something like this can happen, that our country can allow it to happen, that we can, allow this type of activity to occur in a foreign jurisdiction by facilitating it in the manner in which we have done, leave aside all of the other injustices which Mr. Bailey has suffered. So what I think about it is that I think it's a grotesque miscarriage of justice. People should understand also that this was not a criminal trial or a criminal proceeding in the way that we understand. This was no more than a rubber stamping exercise of the predetermined guilt of Mr. Ian Bailey as far as the French criminal justice system is concerned.
But Frank Buttimer, just to interrupt you there, wasn't this fundamentally done, that the French system and the Irish system, the legal systems, are quite different? We have a very adversarial system. They have quite a different system where judges will preside over and listen to evidence. Wasn't it just that they used their own system, really?
No, it wasn't. In fact, they used our evidence.
Yes, used our evidence within their system of presiding judges.
Yeah, but you must understand what our system allows us to do. In our system, the police are unsupervised by any outside authority. What supervises our police and the activities and the product of their activities is our court system. There is no such like supervision in the French jurisdiction because their investigative system involves the supervision of their police by their judges. That did not happen here. So Ian Bailey falls between two stools. He has not had the benefit of the policing of the police over there in France by the method by which they do that sort of stuff, Over here, of course, the DPP here has said long since that the evidence so-called against Ian Bailey was gathered in a thoroughly flawed and prejudiced manner. But if the DPP had decided at any point in time to put that evidence before an Irish jury, the policing of that would have been the criminal justice trial system. Ian Bailey doesn't have access to that because he's innocent here.
Yes, and as you say, that is interesting, that evidence that was dismissed by our DPP was allowed to be used in France. In fact, was used in France to secure today's
may I say to you, it was the only evidence, because there was no evidence gathered by the so-called police investigation that was carried out by the French police with the cooperation of the Irish Department of Justice, who allowed a foreign police force to come into our country, access our files. Those files are shipped across to another jurisdiction where there are no checks and balances, where there is no fairness.
Okay, but listen, we're not going to get into saying just how few checks and balances.
But it's what this is all about.
Can we move this on, though,
Keelin,
Mr. Buttimer?
it is what this is all about.
But what I want to ask you now is what actually happens next. Ian Bailey has been convicted in absentia in France. He has previously, the Irish courts have refused to extradite him. Will anything actually happen at this point?
I suspect that what will happen next is that we in this country will have to look at how this could have happened in the first place and check to see what view we have and what view our Department of Justice has about our independent judicial and criminal justice systems. That's the first thing that we should do as a nation, and look at this case very carefully, because it isn't just about Ian Bailey. This is about us as a democracy and a functioning system. That's at our level. We really should look at this. The second thing
so we should look at how this came to pass.
Absolutely.
But in terms of what happens to Mr. Bailey himself, I believe the French judge has also said that he's going to be looking for Mr. Bailey to pay compensation, and is going to announce at a later date when how much of that compensation should be paid. I mean, would there be any notion that Mr. Bailey may just go, OK, I'll pay the compensation, let's get this finished?
Mr. Bailey has no money. He has no assets, he has no means. He's a person who has not been able to work in any meaningful way since this whole situation was visited upon him 23 years ago almost. He has had a dreadfully difficult life. His life is destroyed as a result of the wrongful association that has been made between him and this crime, with which he had absolutely nothing to do. What will happen next, of course, is that the French will come back and for the third time probably seek to have him arrested in the middle of the night by the Irish police, acting at the behest of a foreign jurisdiction, to remove him unlawfully from this country to face so-called justice in a foreign country. That's what's going to happen next. Anybody who cares about justice should look at this very carefully.
But I suppose speaking to extradition lawyers or lawyers who might specialise in that area today, they would say it's highly unlikely with the previous attempts to extradite him through Irish courts that anything fundamentally will have changed. So yes, he may be arrested, he may be brought to the High Court, but he won't actually be put out of the country.
That's what I would expect, but I do expect them to come and try again with another act of gross disrespect to our Supreme Court, which said nigh on 7 years ago that Mr. Bailey cannot be extradited from this country for the trial which they were intending to conduct in France. I would very, very much doubt if our courts would now go behind their decision and say, well, look, that's fine. You've had your so-called trial over there, even though we couldn't send him out to face it in the first place. But you can have him at this point in time because you've gone through a process. It would be extremely unlikely, nigh on impossible, that would happen. But that will not deter the French.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening, Mr. Buttimer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leaving certificate students who suffer a close family bereavement during or in the run-up to the exams will, for the first time this year, be able to take up to 3 days off and sit alternative papers in July. The exams begin next week.
This change has come about as a result of an argument put by one student who sat her Leaving Certificate exams last year. Last June, Rona Butler's mother, Margaret, died in the middle of her daughter's exams. Margaret passed away on the night of June 13th, and the following morning, Rona had to sit her business exam. Between her mother's death and her funeral, Rona sat more exams.
It was such a surreal experience. I think I was just in shock, and that's why I was just able to go in and do it.
Rona's plea for change last January for some flexibility and compassion proved compelling. The minister ordered a review, and this is the result.
The option is there now for a person sitting there leaving cert who loses a loved one while sitting their exams, that they can take up to 3 days, and these days are up to including the day of the funeral and the day after, where they can reschedule those papers on the 8th of July at a special sitting in Athlone. So that option's there. It hasn't been there before.
Today, Rona said she's absolutely delighted.
I'm so glad that there'll be something in place by her anniversary, and just for students this year. Like, in my situation between the funeral and just my own emotions, I was tired and not in a good headspace to sit exams. So I think if I had sat those exams into July, I would have done much better and just been happier with my performance overall.
These new provisions apply to students who lose a close relative, such as a parent or guardian or a sibling or grandparent, during the exams or in the days just before. While very few students find themselves in this position, fewer than 10 last year for instance, for those who do, this should help. Emma O'Kelly, RTE News.
Today was the last day for the public to submit their views on a revamp of Phoenix Park in Dublin. A number of additional services had been proposed to improve the visitor experience, but not all have met with enthusiasm.
A sprawling 1,700 acres in Dublin City, home to these deer and an attraction for more than 10 million people every year. But the OPW says the Phoenix Park is under pressure and in need of improvement.
You know, we need upgraded toilets, we need a cafe that is actually big enough to accommodate the people, that we're not getting complaints, you know, that they can't get in or they're queuing for a long period of time.
An independent review of the visitor experience here set out the potential for developments, including welcome pavilions at this entrance, the expansion of the visitor centre and the restoration of the magazine fort. Other more aspirational projects could include a funicular tram and a driverless shuttle. But the prospect of retail units and a concrete spread has locals concerned.
Well, we don't want to see the idea of tourists being brought in at the expense of the local people who use and love the Phoenix Park. It's a place for passive recreation. If you haven't a penny to your name, you can come and walk or sit in the park.
Nasa Hourigan and her family are regulars in the park. She wants biodiversity to be at the forefront of any plans.
Let's actively plant native species, indigenous species. You would expect to see meadows of wildflowers. You would expect to see very little in mowing or cutback. And really you allow nature to take back the park a little bit.
The OPW says this is just a review and nothing is set in stone.
This evening marks the deadline for members of the public to have their say on this review. The OPW says that these views will be taken into account and that any future projects here in the Phoenix Park will be subject to the planning process. Laura Hogan, RTE News.
RTE 2FM has been celebrating 40 years on the air today. The station began back in 1979 to provide pop music and other shows for young audiences. Well, this week it launched its brand new schedule, which aims to engage with audiences in the new digital era.
And to present Pop Around Ireland, here is Larry Gogan.
Introduced by Brendan Balfe, Larry Gogan played the first song on 2FM, Like Clockwork by the Boomtown Rats, 40 years ago today. The brand new station had been established by RTE to cater for a younger audience, and many of the new DJs came from pirate radio.
We had the kind of the patch over the eye thing, and it was very different for RTE to suddenly be dealing with fellas like us, because this had been a very safe haven, if you will, for broadcasting, and rightly so, for many years. And we arrived in, and I think shook the place up a bit.
The station went on to feature some of the best-known voices in Irish broadcasting, including that of the late Jerry Ryan.
And a very good morning to you, Ryan, on the radio until midday.
But how music is listened to has changed radically over the past 4 decades. So in the era of Spotify and YouTube, what can 2FM do to engage a young audience?
It's the whole plethora of new platforms that the station needs to be on. It needs to be relevant, needs to reflect back a kind of conversation back to young people about what they're discussing, where their heads are at.
Tracy Clifford here with you until 4 p.m. today.
The station's new schedule features a predominantly female daytime lineup. That's a big change from 1979, and it includes a new 9 to 12 speech-based show hosted by Jennifer Zamparelli.
No one's ever going to be Jerry Ryan. Jennifer Zamparelli's going to be Jennifer Zamparelli. There's going to be edge, it's going to be funny, she's going to give opinion. It's for 25 to 34-year-olds.
Well, I think we found through research that Irish people like to talk and they like to listen. So we're going back to more of a talk show format.
2FM has plans to be coming at you for many years to come. Sinead Crowley, RTE News.
Liverpool and Spurs fans are arriving in big numbers to Madrid ahead of tomorrow night's Champions League final. Liverpool are looking to be crowned champions of Europe for a 6th time, while Spurs are playing in their first Champions League final. Paul O'Flynn is in Madrid for us.
Blurry-eyed, it all begins with an early morning flight to Malaga, a quick wash and a hop across town for a 3-hour train to Madrid.
Yeah, Spurs. We're going to win. For 2 days, we're going to win. Up the dubs.
As the Spanish countryside passes, thoughts turn to tickets and just how much they might pay on the black market.
Probably 500 is our budget max, like, we'll see after that, but probably when we get up there and we're drunk, 1,200.
It's up there now, yeah. But yeah, no, we're surviving away anyway, so I look forward to getting to Madrid anyway, and we'll enjoy it a lot more, I think, now as well.
Accommodation costs too are through the roof. Here at the Open Hostel in Madrid, they're asking €500 a night for a single bed in a 4-bed dorm. Staff member Ana Antasana says even at that, fans have been asking if they can sleep on a sofa or on the terrace. As the fans arrive, the party gets started. The Plaza Mayor painted red and white.
Yeah, I came from Atlanta, USA. Arrived here this morning at 6 o'clock. Very excited. Can't wait to see you.
I'm from Vancouver in Canada, so it's been quite the long journey, but I'm just happy to be here and see all the fans around. It's a fantastic atmosphere. Madrid's a wonderful city.
We got here, we flew here on Wednesday. We booked the flights before we'd even played Barca at the first leg.
So we were so confident we were going to win.
Yeah.
Well, it was 24 hours on the plane and all Liverpool. We haven't seen a Tottenham supporter. I think we're playing Tottenham. But yeah, long way, but all worth it.
So they've come on planes, trains and automobiles, all just to be here in Madrid for the Champions League final. And the party, as you can see behind me, is already well and truly underway, and it's sure to go on until the early hours of Sunday morning. Paul O'Flynn, RTE News in Madrid.
Still to come on tonight's 6-1, a trip to the Irish Masters. Rare works by Sir John Lavery and Walter Osborne go on display in Limerick.
And coming up in sport, it's do or die in the Munster Hurling Championship as Waterford host the All-Ireland champions Limerick. And history beckons for in New York as Katie Taylor bids to become the undisputed lightweight champion of the world.
You're very welcome back to the programme. The main news again this evening. Ian Bailey has been convicted in his absence by a French court of the murder of the film producer Sophie Toscan de Plantier in West Cork in 1996. The 62-year-old former journalist has been sentenced to 25 years in prison following the non-jury trial. 3 women who died following a 2-car collision in County Limerick last evening have been named locally. Mary Noonan, a sister of the former minister Michael Noonan, Mary Costello and Maeve Bradley were all aged in their 70s. A 4th woman is being treated for her injuries.
Work by the artists Sir John Lavery and Walter Osborne will feature in the summer exhibition at Limerick's Hunt Museum, which opens this weekend. It includes over 60 paintings, many from private collections and some which have not been seen in public for over 130 years.
Sir John Lavery and Walter Osborne are 2 of Ireland's best-known painters whose work captured life around the late 1800s and early 1900s. Osborne, known as the Irish Impressionist, featured city and rural working scenes, often with women, children and pets. Over 400 of Lavery's paintings featured his wife Hazel, whose face graced the Irish currency for 50 years. The Laverys were well known in London society, and their home was frequented by the signatories of the Irish Treaty in 1921. The gold turban was his last painting of her before she died.
At that time she was an agent for Pond's Cream, and that is reflected in the painting in itself. But thereafter she was ill, and she died in 1935.
Over 50 of the paintings are from private collections sourced in the UK and the US, many not seen in public for over 100 years.
Osborne's work in particular has not been seen. A lot of the works are coming from the UK, and some of them were exhibited in the RHA in 1887, and they've probably never been seen since then.
The exhibition is part of a much wider educational programme run by the Hunt Museum right across social media to widen its audience for its collection of art and antiquities.
We're also running an online exhibition at the same time, which reflects the kind of capturing of the moments that they did as part of their recording and documenting life at the times. So they were, if you like, the original selfie makers.
The Lavery Osborne exhibition runs from June until September. Cathy Halloran, RTE News, Limerick.
Time for all the day's sports news now. Here's Jackie.
Thanks, Ray. Well, history beckons for Katie Taylor this weekend as she bids to become the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. Her weigh-in takes place in New York this evening, and our Washington correspondent Brian O'Donovan has travelled up to be there. And Brian, no doubt, as we can see there in the background, huge atmosphere building ahead of what should be a magnificent weekend.
Absolutely, Jackie. The stage being set here behind me for that official pre-fight weigh-in due to get underway in the next couple of hours. Katie Taylor tomorrow night facing what she has described as the biggest night in her career, hoping to make history by becoming the undisputed world champion in her lightweight division. She already has 3 belts in that division. Tomorrow night she's hoping to win the 4th and final belt. She's had a stellar career since turning pro, 13 wins, no losses, but her opponent will be no walkover. The Belgian Delphine Persoon, 43 wins under her belt, so it will be quite the fight. Eddie Hearn is the boxing promoter in charge of all of this. I spoke to him a short time ago. He told me he's expecting big crowds of Irish fans here tomorrow night in Madison Square Garden for what will be a big night for Katie Taylor and a big night for Irish sport.
When you hear Katie Taylor say this is the biggest moment of my career, you know it's a pretty big deal because she's seen and done it all. 6 European Amateur Championships, 5 Amateur World Championships, an Olympic gold. She won the world title, she unified it again. And tomorrow night at the Mecca of boxing, Madison Square Garden, she gets a chance to be undisputed. For those that don't understand, undisputed is every belt in the division. It's the absolute golden chalice for any fighter. Ring Magazine belt on the line as well. For Katie Taylor, this is the biggest moment probably of her life.
Now, Katie Taylor is an undercard fight ahead of an Anthony Joshua heavyweight bout. That means she should be up around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time here in New York. That'll be 1:30 a.m. on Sunday morning back home in Ireland.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Brian. Well, as you saw a little bit earlier on in the bulletin, the Minister for Sport, Shane Ross, has called on the FAI to review the appointment of Noel Mooney as interim general manager. He was speaking at the Irish Football Stakeholders Forum today. Our soccer correspondent, Tony O'Donoghue, was there and he joins us live now from Richmond Park. So, Tony, what did you make of it all today?
Yeah, it was called a crisis meeting, and you could understand why. It was said that the football family has been splintered, but it was also suggested that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for change and reform to happen. With regard to that Noel Mooney appointment, the Minister for Sport, Shane Ross, has been very unhappy about that, saying that it's not in the spirit of reform, because he welcomed the declaration from the board of the FAI that they would resign at the July AGM of the association. Noel Mooney coming in from UEFA for a 6-month secondment, but he was hoping that the FAI would review that. The FAI responded a short time ago in a statement in that regard. They thanked the people involved in the forum today for their views. They also acknowledged that the Minister said that they have autonomy in these matters, and in a rather terse way they said any employer or employee of the FAI is the business of the FAI. So splintered football family remains, it seems. It is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, we're told. Time will tell.
We shall see. Tony O'Donoghue, thank you for the moment. Well, a massive weekend of Gaelic Games action ahead as well. It's crunch time in the Munster Hurling Championship as Limerick and Waterford go head-to-head, with both chasing a first win. Well, Claire welcomed Tipperary to Ennis.
Last year in the Championship, Limerick beat Waterford handsomely.
And it's a brilliant finish!
And won again in this season's Alliance League final. Can it be third time lucky for Waterford?
Sunday could act as a catalyst for a performance the following Saturday night, and if they just concentrate on Sunday, welcoming the All-Ireland champions, beating the All-Ireland champions, and ultimately then taking it down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh to a winner takes all, really.
I think Limerick need to vary their game a bit more. I think a lot of teams are copping onto us now, especially Cork last week. You could say they played us very to a similar style and we couldn't deal with it. So I think we'll be a bit more direct on Sunday with possibly Aaron Gillan pushing more left opposed to central.
After decades of heartbreak, Clare finally beat Tipperary in the Munster Championship in Thurles last year. This season, both teams are unbeaten in the provincial competition, which makes Cusack Park in Ennis a real battleground this Sunday.
For Clare to beat Tip, they need to capitalise on the momentum they had from the Waterford game the last day. I suppose it's a home game. They need to make sure from the word go that they're using all that advantage that comes with it. Make sure that they try and put Tip on the back foot as much as they can and look, just enjoy the home game and really express themselves as much as they can.
Yeah, I know Tip, or you're saying that Tip might be the form team. It's 2 games, they had a good win against Cork, they had a super win against Waterford. I think this is going to be a different test. Down in Ennis, 19,000 people. It's going to be a different atmosphere down there. It's going to be something that Tip aren't used to.
Well, once again, the Munster Hurling Championship has proven to be thrilling, but also that every game is crucial. Waterford and Limerick are both beaten. That means that Sunday's game is knockout, really. While Clare and Tipperary will always take on a life of its own. Walsh Park will be packed, Cusack Park will be thronged, and Ennis will be buzzing. Marty Morrissey, RT News, Ennis, County Clare.
And that is all the sports news for now, so it's back to you, Keelin.
Jackie, thank you very much indeed. Well, before we go, we'll get to take a look at the main news again this evening. Ian Bailey has been convicted in his absence by a French court of the murder of the film producer Sophie Toscan de Plantier. The 62-year-old former journalist has been sentenced to 25 years in prison following the non-jury trial.
Ms Toscan de Plantier's family have said Mr Bailey must now be extradited from Ireland. However, his solicitor described his conviction as a grotesque miscarriage of justice.
And you can, of course, keep up to date with that story and lots more on the RTE News Now app.
And that's Friday's 6-1 News. Thanks for watching.
Have a great bank holiday weekend. We'll be back with you again on Tuesday. Bye-bye.
See you then. Bye-bye.